For Madison homes, solar panels aren't your only option for capturing the sun's energy. SunVault Roofing, based right here in Dane County, installs solar shingles. So not your conventional panel, but solar technology built directly into the roof itself. It's designed to blend in visually, and it's the perfect option for homeowners already thinking about getting a new roof. Y'all get the most out of that old roof. See what solar shingles look like on real Madison homes today at sunvaultroofing.com. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, springtime is almost here, which means plants are growing and closets need cleaning. So it's a perfect time to ask, do you know where your clothes are grown? The fashion industry, with its use of synthetic fibers, is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. But here in Madison, one local organization is trying to change that. Midwest Linen Revival is calling for a return to the age-old practices of using sustainable plant-based fibers for clothes. To mark the season, we're bringing back my conversation with Midwest Linen Revival founder Leslie Schrader, where we talk about the growing flax fiber movement in Madison and how to bring sustainability to the apparel industry. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Bianca. Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
So tell us, what is the flax fiber movement?
Well, that's going to take us a while to get all the way through it. But what it is, the amazing flax plant and the idea that we can grow this plant for fiber and have a regionally scaled textile industry.
And when we're talking about flax, I think a lot of folks will think about the flax seeds that they grind up and they put in their food to be healthier. What plant are we talking about with the fiber?
Same plant. And I do want to say those seeds are really, really good for you.
Right. Yeah. So I've been told.
There's a different strain of the same plant that is grown for seed. And it's also then planted more diffusely, so fewer plants per acre. And then it's branchier and shorter when we're growing it for seed, because we really want to encourage that seed growth. And then when it's grown for fiber, it's grown much more densely, so many more plants per acre. And then it's a taller strain that's been selected for its height.
Okay, amazing. So we're looking at this, I'm going to call it a miracle plant, as all of our plants are, right? But this fantastic plant that makes linen, you founded the Midwest Linen Revival. Leslie, why are you smitten with linen, and what are the problems that linen can fix?
Well, so it is an amazing plant, so it's offering us food. And then the fiber, as I was just saying, though, it's a long stem. It is coming from the stem of the plant. And also the scientific name of the plant is Linum usatatissimum, which means the plant most useful. So it is giving us a lot. And it's a plant that grows well without a lot of inputs, without a lot of need for irrigation. So this can help us diversify our agricultural offerings with a, sustainably grown crop. And then at the same time, where we're talking about the fiber, we can start having more domestically sourced textiles.
And why is that important?
So for me, it's really, really foundational about the relationship that we're having with our clothes. So start all the way back there with finished garments. We're thinking about, where did the fibers for our clothes come from? And not a lot of us have that connection right now. And in growing this plant, it is a plant that people have had that relationship with for literally thousands and thousands of years. And I think that when we deepen into our sense of place and we're able to make those connections, I draw a lot of inspiration and connection from the local foods movement. And so really similar, we have that relationship with where did the strawberry grow and who is the farmer growing it and then making delicious food. We can have this same opportunity to deepen into a relationship, but the avenue being through our clothes.
Because the average clothes that we might go out and buy today, their fibers are not from the farm down the road, typically.
They're really going through a long journey, and that's one aspect to it. But currently, our textiles are really heavily synthetic. So there's a lot of environmental implications to that are super negative, not just from the extraction of petroleum and then the manufacture of our synthetic garments. Now we're talking about our polyesters and nylons, extremely prevalent in current textiles. And then they're there because it's really inexpensive. So it's inexpensive, but not inexpensive environmentally. And then when we are wearing and washing those heavily synthetic garments, little nanofibers are breaking off and going into our water. So 30% of microplastics in water are actually from us laundering our clothes. So we have plastics all over the place, right? We've got plastics in like my phone case or my vacuum cleaner, but they're not interacting with water in the same way and, the friction of going through the wash. So we should all wash our clothes less often. But also
yeah,
we
30%. That's a staggering number.
That's really significant. And we don't know exactly what the implications are to our health. But, those little nanofibers of plastic, they're in our bodies now. They're in our brains. We are literally drinking our old shirts at this time. And then at the end game, these clothes that when we're done wearing them, the synthetic clothes go sit in a heap in a landfill for pretty much forever. Or some other bad things happen, like perhaps they're lit on fire. So I just gave you a really bad story. And then I want to talk about flax, which can be the solution.
Right. Well, that's why we're here, is for the solution. But I do think it is important to kind of get into the problem a bit. And it's about where we're getting our clothes. You said talking about our relationship with our clothes and how we get them. A lot of clothing these days is just purchased online from manufacturers across the world to be delivered tomorrow. So that's the fast fashion industry, right? And that pace comes at a cost. And in addition to the cost that higher price tags are for consumers, right? So I really am glad that we talked about that and anchored like there are serious costs to not using more sustainable, healthier sort of methods for creating our clothing. And I do want to ask you about connecting this to the local food movement, because I feel like that's a really easy, accessible way in. Madison loves our farmers markets and being connected to our food and knowing who grew our strawberries and having that connection. And so kind of anchoring flax fiber as an answer to some of this fast fashion is a really exciting thing because it's local. And in that same way, is this also kind of a call to bring back some of that textile manufacturing to be local as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One aspect that's super important to me is about diversifying on-farm income opportunities. So if we can build this whole system, we can provide our farmers a really great crop that works well in a lot of small grain rotations. And every time you diversify your on-farm income, you make those farms more stable because of the possibilities of price fluctuations with commodity crops. So that's a really important one. And then also that it's not diversifying with another heavy input crop. It's a crop, the flax plant, that can grow relatively easily, sustainably. Like I said, people have had that relationship growing this plant for thousands of years, and all farms were organic, of course, for most of that time. So the plant hasn't become reliant on needing the inputs. And then just, when we have more of a manufacturing processing for the flax plant and then into our textile industry, this is creating rural job opportunities.
The more I learn about the story, the more excited I am about it and what is possible with flax fiber. And you said that, when we're thinking about our region, we're not cotton growers, right? But it sounds like fiber flax grows really well here. Could Madison specifically become the face of this movement and the slow fashion movement, I suppose?
I don't see why not. Flax grows really well in our region. There are other folks that have become smitten with linen in the East Coast in Pennsylvania. There's an organization, Pennsylvania Flax Project, and then folks working hard at Oregon State. Yeah, we're not going to be growing cotton here, but the flax plant grows really well here. And then also a number of other reasons why it's a good fit for our region. Like the first step in processing is called retting, which works well with dewy mornings, which we have here in the Midwest. But you were getting at specifically Madison. Like I said, we need to always center in thinking of the flax plant, the agricultural aspect. So for me, it's important that it is becoming something that's accessible for rural job opportunities. I think that University of Madison can play a really great role with researchers, with their enthusiastic textile students. And then, you're right, absolutely, in people are already in the Madison area, like making those connections with their food. So they're kind of a ready-made, enthusiastic audience. So 100%.
Yeah, and I don't know that the average person who's not maybe a part of the fiber arts community is thinking about how are my clothes made, But there's a lot of reasons to think about that. And you laid out some, staggering statistics and chemical dyes being something that's used regularly in some of the synthetic textile manufacturing. Do you think knowing some of these sorts of statistics and knowing that tariffs are now offering higher prices for the sort of fast fashion and accessing clothes from around the world in a second's time might make the movement towards these more sustainable local fiber practices more appealing?
Yeah, so there's kind of two things there that I want to follow up on. The dyes that are used in our clothing, in some ways, there's a number of them that wouldn't be allowed in this country. So we have some more environmental protections than some other countries. So that's somebody else's water that we're polluting with it. So we don't necessarily see it. And bringing it right up to being against your skin suddenly makes it seem really important to each individual's health. And as we know, the skin is the largest organ in our bodies. So what are we absorbing through some of those is a really important question. Again, don't really have a lot of information to research and understanding it. But there are a number of stories and lawsuits out there where organizations changed their uniforms, and then all of the employees wearing the uniforms suddenly were getting real serious skin problems. And then, sued to have their uniforms changed. So that's one thing to really be aware of. It's impactful. It's harder to trace it when it's just like one person wearing one garment. But really, when you were wearing uniforms, it was really clear, right? Immediately.
There's something going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. So there's that immediate, and then there's the environmental impact of microplastics in water. That's very down home. That's our clothes. It's our laundry. It's going right into our water. And then the other part of your question, tariffs, that's where we're at right now. Honestly, I love that the textile industry, the fashion industry is talking about tariffs. It's suddenly right up front in people's thinking. And then that is surfacing for us the real long journey that the textiles do go on. Because in the United States, for example, we do have actually a lot of wool. We do actually grow a lot of cotton, but then it's not processed or finished here. So that people are starting to think about.
It starts here and it goes abroad and comes back.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a lot of investment as far as transportation impacts. So that the fact that people are talking about that, how absolutely wonderful. The tariffs themselves, though, it's you can't just say we're going to charge more for some imported goods and then suddenly we have manufacturing facilities. We don't. We need the investment here. And so I feel like that's what really would help is actual investment, especially from, government loans and grants to support and grow our textile industry.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
The opposite of fast fashion is slow fashion. I did want to ask about the processing of flax fiber. Because how slow is it?
So there's really two distinctive paths. So there is this very beautiful hand-worked artisanal scale, which is where we're at right now. And there's all kinds of really cool words that go along with the processing of flax. So we harvest the flax by pulling it, actually just uproot the plant, and then lay it down in the field. And the first step in processing is retting. And this is a slight decomposition of the plant, which loosens those fibers in the stem from the inner woody part of the plant called the shive. And then this is an important thing to get to know this process and to be able to determine and assess when it's gone far enough. Because if you don't leave it long enough, the fibers will not want to come loose, and you'll actually end up breaking some of them as you're trying to process. If you leave it to rot for too long, all you'll have is a mess, which you could then make paper with, but you won't be able to make some beautiful textiles when the fiber's been degraded by being left to rot for too long. So then the plant is dried, and then you'd put it through a hand brake, which is a wooden tool that starts to separate that shive and the fiber, so the brake, and then a scutching board, which is the next step in kind of cleaning that fiber from the shive, and then a hackle, which is actually a series of a bed of very, very sharp nails. And then you have a cleaned fiber that's called a sliver, and then from there you need to spin it. And there are some people with some really deep, skillful knowledge in hand spinning. And then from there, you could do what you'd like. You might weave it or knit it.
Okay, well, Leslie, those are a lot of words that if you are not in the fiber arts community, you might not know. So I feel like I'm learning a lot. And I know that you are obviously, deep in the fiber crafts community. You make your own clothes, you sew, knitting, even weaving on a floor loom. Like, you are deep into the crafts. And I understand Madison has a fairly robust community here. Like, are you seeing people taking to using flax fiber? What's the current status and picture of the movement just right here in Madison?
Yeah, so we have a pretty substantial woolen textile industry in Wisconsin, all things being relative. There's a fair number of sheep out there. And so you get your hands on some local wool is absolutely doable. And so I want to say with the flax journey, I started out in 2002 and actually did a survey of our regional fiber arts and crafts community and asked if there was local linen, would you buy it? And the answer was such a resounding yes. That's the journey that I've been on. So I started there to get a feel for were people working with it. And a lot of people had already actually started linen projects. It's just not easy to get a hold of. So the people that are, especially with the Madison Weavers Guild, they're probably the most enthusiastic. They're like, Leslie, when? When will we have some of your flax fiber?
And what drew you to all of this? Because you are just an absolutely fascinating person. What got you hooked on linen and this plant?
Yeah, so
that sounds like a drug. What got you hooked on this plant?
Yeah, I'm there for it.
Yeah.
Not eating lunch because I'm out tending my flax. I feel like everything in my whole life led me to this, honestly. As I grew into adulthood, I became more and more interested in cooking good food, and then it just kind of deepened from there, from cooking food into wanting to grow my own garden, and then from there wanting to forage. And so that was just like this deeper journey. And then on the other hand, I was going through something similar with fiber. Like, I taught myself how to sew, and then I was like, oh, it's fun to go to the fabric store and touch the fabrics, but what if I could make the fabric? So then, knitting is actually a form of just making fabric, and then, learning how to weave. And then what's natural next up is, of course, like, can I make these fibers? But it was really that I was out at a group forage that had been sharing other traditional skills, and I was introduced to wild forage cordage. So there's other plants out there from which the stem makes fiber. We're probably pretty familiar with hemp fiber. That's a bast fiber. So is milkweed. So is dogbane. So is nettles. So people, again, have been engaging these for tens of thousands of years. And when I was just shown that, I thought, wow, this is so fundamental and so important in our ability to, make all of our textiles, yes, but also in a lot of different utility that we've found in that fiber over our human history.
Right. You can use it for clothing, but you can use it for bedding, luggage, upholstery, like linen is everything. I'm just saying that right now. It's summertime, so it's in fashion, right? So it's breathable, which is not only in fashion, but also as our planet heats up, is going to be even more necessary. But it does seem like it's really, really a neat plan. And just thinking about the fact that you're trying to bring this to the broader public and get people connected with the fibers of their being, the fibers of their clothing seems really profound in a way.
Yeah, and humans have had that relationship, and we've just kind of forgotten it. It's so right in front of us. And so, back to the local foods movement, I think it is just an opportunity for a way for us to deepen into our sense of place. And, so to ask that question, who grew your clothes? And can you have a relationship somehow with where that plant came from?
A lot of people are buying this fast fashion, and I'm guilty of it too. I've tried to slow it down. But I do think if there were more options locally where I felt like, oh, I'm really interested in this outfit or this outfitter or store that's selling linen products, and I know it's from the farm in the region, it might be something I would dig. I'm curious, what do you think it might take for a flax fiber revival to really take hold on a larger scale here and what that would look like?
Yeah. So like we were talking about, back with the idea of tariffs, like it's great that it's bringing awareness, but you can't just like snap your fingers and say we have a textile industry now. So it really requires investment. If I could have my dreams come true, one would be that I would like to connect with somebody who's a tinkerer. There's an opportunity for some really small scale, like tabletop processing equipment. So I would love to connect with somebody who's a tinkerer who has that same passion.
Any tinkerers out there?
Get in touch. And then, from there, it is going to be financial investment and purchasing some of that larger equipment. I got to say, there's a real concern that I have, though, in two things. Making sure that we grow at the right scale. I want to make sure that we don't replicate fast fashion, because we could, just have huge processing facilities. We could just repeat all of the same problems. We could mistreat the flax plant to the extent that we've, mistreated some other plants in excess. And so I think we need to foundationally build making sure that we grow at the right speed and scale.
You're a Da Vinci over here. You're an inventor. You're making all of these things happen. I understand you helped get the flax fiber onto the UW-Madison's emerging crop list, which is big. You've also been dubbed by the Wisconsin Farmers Union as the flax ma'am of the region. Like, you're working hard for this.
I am, but it's because every time I talk to somebody else, they just they're nodding their head. So it's an idea that's, I think, right time, right place. People are seeing we're at the crossroads of a lot of different problems, and we have a lot of opportunity with the solution here with the flax plant.
Well, what do you most wish people understood about the revival and this movement at this juncture?
So I invite everybody to grow a little bit of flax, to start a relationship with that plant. They make beautiful little blue flowers, and then just to, experience the ret, the first stage of the processing and the slight decomposition of the plant. So I'd say that's a great place to start if you feel like being a little handy gardener or you're into textiles anyways. Definitely. Otherwise, everybody start reading the labels on your clothes. Look at that tag. When I was a kid, there wasn't as much labeling in food, and it was not the thing that you did to pick up the box and flip it over. And now people just do that because we are looking for the contents. We're scanning for, there's allergies out there, but also just wanting to know really what's in that food. So look at the tag on your clothes. It's giving you that same information, and just start being aware of what you're wearing.
How can folks get more involved in the broader movement?
Within the larger context of regional textiles, there's an organization called Fibershed, which if anybody's interested in reshoring American textiles, Fibershed has got a really lot of great information. And again, doing it in a way that is healthy for us and our environment. That's their emphasis in regenerative soil. And then the North American Linen Association. If you're interested in, really digging into what's going on, that is a great organization. You can check out our website, Midwest Linen Revival, where we're posting news and any upcoming interesting events.
All right, Leslie, it has been so lovely learning all about the movement, and you've given such a good reason for everyone to know about flax fiber and the linen revival movement. Leslie, thank you for joining us on CityCast Madison and shining your light and sharing your knowledge about this very worthy moment.
Oh, Bianca, thank you so much for your enthusiasm about it. And thank you for using the great CityCast opportunity to share that with others.
That's Leslie Schrader, founder of the Midwest Linen Revival. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who likes to grow things? Alrighty, we'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care.